Can you everybody hear me? I don't. Gosh, I just saw that great picture. My hair was long. I whapped it all off. I was like, ooh, why did I do that? I have to tell you, I usually do my lectures at a podium, but I've been told to sit down. So I guess it's a good thing. I have on new shoes and my feet hurt. It's really nice to be here, and what a wonderful, warm welcome. What an incredible city. This is my first time to Monterey, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I am happy to be here, and I'm thankful to the sponsors and the staff, and the kids here have done a phenomenal job with this speaker series, so I think they deserve a huge round of applause. Wow, this is kind of fun. Do your teachers do this? You know, when I first did a lecture circuit, I was really nervous because I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I, went to college and I slept through most of the lectures. You want me to go out and talk? I don't know honestly how I found myself in this position where I would be out publicly speaking to anybody about anything. Most of the time, people just want me to shut up. Especially Ed Masry. Every time he sees me, he's like, ooh, it's Brockovich. But since the release of a movie starring Julia Roberts and bearing my name, I've found myself speaking to the masses, and it has become a very large part of my work. Believe me when I tell you there has never been anything stranger in my life than sitting there and watching a movie unfold about the work that you've done in your family. And when I watched it for the first time, I thought, this is so weird, because you're only kind of like supposed to look back on your life when you're dead. Am I dead? And I have found myself really in a very unique situation. I have been able to experience both sides of what it is that I think sometimes we're looking for. We always ask ourselves, is the grass greener on the other side? And the answer to that is yes and no. I've been on the side where I've had no money. I've been on the side where I was fortunate enough to have money. I've raised children on my own. I've raised children with a husband. That didn't go over very well, but I did get to experience both sides. And I think that each individual is the only person that can answer that question for themselves. Is the grass really greener on the other side? And I think that if you are true to yourself and true to your cause and your purpose for what you believe in, that you'll be able to find out for yourself if the grass is greener on the other side. It's all actually very relative. So the movie focused on portions of my life, but mostly on the work that I did for the law firm of Masry and Vidito in a direct action lawsuit brought against a giant utility, Pacific Gas and Electric. Together, we were able to show that the citizens in the community of Hinckley, California and Kettleman, California had been exposed to water contaminated with a chemical called chromium-6 and/or hexavalent chromium. It was in 1996, after 4 long and difficult years, I found myself on the receiving end of a large settlement, a big bonus, and a movie. Now, you want to talk about throwing a person into an absolute tailspin. That did it. Today, I continue to work at the law offices of Masry and Vidito. I have been there for 12 years. It is the longest job I have ever held. And Ed continues to curse the day he ever met me. Our work is about the environment, but our real challenge is trying to intercept certain corporations and their deceits that can end up destroying the public health and safety. I'm an advocate for awareness. I'm an advocate for the right to know. I have seen firsthand the outcome of a corporation's deceit. It is lost lives, it is disease and illness, and none of us can begin to protect ourselves or our families if we aren't disclosed the truth. You know, oftentimes I see individuals thinking that they're going to be exempt from somebody else's lies, and they're not. When will all of us realize that disease and illness do not recognize social status or the color of your skin or your party affiliation? Disease can afflict all of us. People have a right to know the truth. And as long as I'm around, and as long as corporate America continues to deceive the public, I'm going to continue to do the work that I do. I am hopeful that through this type of work and through my lectures, that I can spread a message that people, all of us, when we work together and we become united, we can make a difference and we can begin to make change in the world. You know, I'm not much of an expert in any one particular thing, but I do know this. I care very much about human beings, all of us as people. I care about my neighbor. I care about your family. I care about your health. I do care if I find out that I have a neighbor who is plotting a murder, and I'm going to choose to stand there and say and do nothing. I often wonder what has happened to our characters and where our value systems have gone. And where are those people that used to come forward and say, hey, you know what? I'm not taking this anymore. You know, every day I fight the bury your head in the sand philosophy, or the why should I care? It's not me, it's not my kids. Well, you should care. It is the ability to choose that makes us human, and I hope that we haven't forgotten that. You can choose to care. You can choose to get involved. You can choose to believe that you can say something and you can be a voice that can begin to make a change. I believe in the power of us as individuals, but I'd be foolish if I sat here and said to you, I'm the Lone Ranger, because I'm not. Had the 634 people of Hinckley, California, along with 3 of the finest attorneys I've ever known, and countless staff members, had all of us not stood together, I don't know that we would have seen the same result. The race of mankind would perish did they cease to aid each other. We cannot exist without mutual help. Walter Scott. And I love that saying, and it's very, very true. All of us together mutually made something happen for the good of the people of Hinckley. So I feel very fortunate that I get to be a spokesperson and come out and work with people. So before I really get into the heart of my talk, I like to share some stories about the movie. So did most people see the movie? Yes? Okay. Because, you know, a couple of times I've been talking to people and they're like, I'm sorry I didn't see the movie. I'm like, well, why didn't you shut me up? I mean, geez. People always ask me if the movie was accurate. Yes, it was. And the movie was probably 95% right on. And Ed Masry, the people of Hinckley, my spouse, my parents, my close coworkers, all of us watched it together, and we decided 95% was pretty right on. And the movie actually started with a girlfriend of mine. I really had a car wreck in Reno, Nevada. I had a C5, C6 discectomy. And Pam Dumont does cranial work, and she's a chiropractor. And I used to go down and see her all the time, and she'd work on my back and shoulders. And I'd tell her stories about, you know, Hinckley and being the single parent and the biker dude and catching dead frogs and all that kind of stuff that I was doing. And she'd always say, you know, she'd say, what a bizarre life you lead, but what a great idea for a movie. And I never paid much mind to her, so one day she asked if I'd meet a friend of hers by the name of Carla Schomburg. And Carla Schomburg is married to Michael Schomburg, who's Danny DeVito's partner in Jersey Films. And that's how the whole movie started. People always want to know if the biker dude was real. So let me say this about that. Had the real biker dude looked anything like the guy in the movie, I would have never kicked him out. So the biker dude is real, but I did not marry him. I have been married now for 5 years to a wonderful gentleman by the name of Eric Ellis, and he's somewhere in here. I just don't see him. Well, I hear your voice. I hear you back talking me. Shut up. Oh, there you are. That's my husband right there. Say hi, Eric. So my kids are real. Matthew, Katie, and Elizabeth. And they're old now. They're dating me. My son is 20 years old. Katie will be 19 in January, and the baby in the movie, Elizabeth, is now 12. And people don't realize what the timeline of my work in Hinckley, California was. It was from 1991 to 1996. And from 1995 to the year 2000, I began my work on the Kettleman case, and they were making the movie. So during all this time, my kids grew up. And they don't pay too much mind to the movie, except my son, Matthew, who says, you know, Mom, having you as my mom in this movie, it's just been great because it's the best pickup line I've ever had. I'm like, oh, is that what you got out of it, Matthew? This kid will call me at midnight from a fraternity party. Oh, Mom, dude, there's like this babe here. Could you talk to her and tell her you're my mom? I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So no, he'll put her on the phone, you know, half an hour later. He'll go, thanks, got her number, gotta go, click. And I don't hear from him for another month. Kids. You know, people always ask me about my wardrobe. You know, I was really surprised after the movie came out that so many people were taken back that Julia Roberts had boobs. But, you know, they're always asked, do you really dress that way? Yes, I do. Oh, come on, some of those outfits are kind of fun. But I never stopped to think about my clothing and how I was dressed. I certainly knew that I never embarrassed myself, and my intentions weren't to embarrass somebody else. But I never stopped to think that a certain shirt or skirt would or wouldn't cause somebody to think a certain way about me. You know, it isn't about the dress, and that's not what I hold in my head and my heart. It's just kind of an outward reflection of a fun side of me. And, you know, people dress certain ways, and I don't like to be judged, and I try not to do it back to others. So you have my permission to wear what you want. So people ask me if I have a potty mouth. Yes. You know, a reporter most recently asked me if I was going to clean up my foul mouth. I said, oh, fuck you. I'm working on it. I'm trying. That's been hard. You know, fuck you is universal. When you say it, you know, okay, there's a problem. I work with lawyers all day. Don't think that they have, you know, the most tasteful language. Where do you think I learned it? You know, there's a movie in the line people always ask me about called Bite My Ass, Krispy Kreme. They want to know if she's real. She is. We've worked together for 12 years. To this day, she does not speak to me. She looks right through me like I'm dead. And that line, Bite My Ass, Krispy Kreme, was an ad lib. And the only thing that upset me about it was I hadn't thought of it myself. So the movie was very accurate, and they took very, very few creative licenses. And I'll share with you very quickly what they were. One, I was not Miss Wichita. Steven Soderbergh, the director of the movie, thought it would be cute to have me as Miss Wichita since I was born and raised in Lawrence, Kansas. And I was actually Miss Pacific Coast in California. And I don't think that he realized the next day, I must have gotten 50 phone calls from reporters in Wichita. We looked you up and you weren't Miss Wichita. I'm like, okay, duh, I know that. And it was actually Jimmy Vitito, Ed Masry's partner at the law firm of Masry and Vitito, who took me to trial in Reno, Nevada. In the movie, they had it as Ed when it was actually Jimmy. And Jimmy Vitito doesn't really get the credit that he deserves. He's an incredible human being. He's a fabulous attorney. He was there for me, and he was there for the entire firm as Ed and I were doing Hinckley, California. And then last but not least, the only other creative license they took was there was a scene in the movie where PG&E had their defense attorneys on one side of the table, and Julia Roberts and Albert Finney were on the other side of the table, and they were talking about the injuries and what they were worth. And one of the female defense attorneys went to take a drink of water, and Julia Roberts said, "We brought that water in special for you folks. It's from a well in Hinckley." Do you remember that scene? And the lady set the water down. Well, that happened, but in a different way. And it happened during trial. And PG&E had a paid expert who was telling the media and going on television that he had been drinking hexavalent chromium with no ill health effects. First of all, we didn't believe him, but we decided that at the time of trial, when this expert was under cross, we would actually bring hexavalent chromium in water out and ask him to drink it, which is exactly what we did. Tom Girardi, Ed Masry's partner in this case, had this expert under cross, and he said, "Now you've told everybody you've been drinking chromium-6 with no ill health effects." He goes, "That's right." And so Mr. Girardi says, "Well, since we're here today in a court of law in front of the judges and the people of Hinckley," and Tom brought out a glass and set it down with a pitcher, started to fill it up. He goes, "We have hexavalent chromium. So in front of everyone here, I want you to drink it." And the expert looked at it and he said, "No, I'm not going to." And Mr. Girardi said, "Why not?" He goes, "Because I don't know what's in it." And he goes, "But sir, the people of Hinckley didn't know it was in their water either." Now, I am telling you, the judge was riveted. He was leaning out over the bench, and he looked right at the expert, and he said, "Drink it, damn it." True story. Ed and I were high-fiving in the back of the courtroom very quickly. Anyway, because he wouldn't, his $7 million groundwater model and his testimony were thrown out of court. So that was a really good day for us and for the people of Hinckley, California. And you know, I want to interject something here, and I'm ashamed of myself that I don't do it more often, because I want to talk about the employees of Pacific Gas and Electric who have been just as injured, and their families, as the victims of Hinckley and Kettleman. They had no idea what they were doing, and they have been some of the most heroic men and women that I have ever met. And had they not come forward, I don't know where we'd be today. It is because of them, because of their duty and belief to their families, that they came forward with the truth that PG&E stipulated to fraud, malice, and oppression. Many of these employees have died. Most people don't realize since this case settled in 1996, we now have had over 50 deaths from this one facility alone, and half of them are the employees. And I hope that there's no misunderstanding about Pacific Gas and Electric and what they knew. As early as 1960, this company knew that they had poisoned the groundwater, and they made a corporate decision to do nothing about it. You know, I feel very compelled to still make sure that I get the truth about these cases out to the public. In the movie, they made a reference of hexavalent chromium and what the level was in the water. And that reference level was 0.58 parts per million. The director of the movie decided to stick with this number because he didn't want to get into all of the trial documents. And what happened was it spun off a lot of scientists and evidentiary problems and junk science, and that hexavalent chromium at that level can't hurt you. Now, first of all, understand that ingestion of hexavalent chromium is controversial as to whether it does or doesn't cause cancer. They clearly know by inhalation that it causes cancer. Now, these people not only drank the water, they swam in it, they bathed in it, they ran it through their swamp coolers, and if that's not inhalation, I don't know what is. But because of all of these factors, Steven Soderbergh, the director, decided to stay with this number. But I'm here to tell you that that 0.58 part per million reading was just one of tens of thousands of monitoring well data results. When we were doing this litigation, the EPA and the state had set allowable hexavalent chromium in water at 0.05 parts per million. PG&E's own internal confidential memorandums disclose that the actual residential water had 20 to 24 parts per million of hexavalent chromium. That's 400 times the standard. And I get very frustrated a lot of times in a court of law that we have this argument about chromium-6 by ingestion, whether it can or can't cause cancer. Because if you pick up most reports and the ATSDR, which is your Agencies for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, if you drink chromium-6 at large quantities, you can forget the cancer because you're going to die. And we have this argument, and I think it's sometimes a tragedy because we're not designed to drink poisons, and it's not acceptable for people to drink poisons. And I don't want any family member to be left out because they're fortunate enough not to be the ones with cancer, yet they're unfortunate enough to be left with failing kidneys and livers and diseases that will last them a lifetime. And I think it's very important that people really know what this corporation knew about what they had done. And my position isn't to try and go around and destroy corporate America. I do not want to do that. There's parts of corporate America that I enjoy like everybody else. But I do believe that large corporations have the technology, the funding, and the person power to be protective of the environment and human health and safety. And that is part of my job, is to holding corporate America to that standard. I guess you could reasonably say that it was the lust for money, corporate greed, that hastened people's end. For me, I would rather lose all of my money than ever lose any of my dignity. I can always get another job, but it's not that easy to get your dignity back. You know, Ed and I have sat and discussed this on many occasions, and for both of us, the saddest part of all of this contamination is that it didn't have to occur. Had people been told the truth, the plaintiff could have began to protect themselves. The cruelest lies are often told in silence. Adlai Stevenson. Because of deceit, people were harmed. Look, I realize that any one of us, any corporation can make a mistake. But when you do, just say it so people can have the choice and make a decision to get out of harm's way. It was long before I ever heard of Pacific Gas and Electric or Masry and Vidito or Hinckley, California. It was the teachings and the influences of my mom and my dad that I had a very solid moral foundation. Growing up in Lawrence, Kansas, which is where I'm from, wasn't always my parents' easiest task. I grew up, and I still am to this day, a dyslexic. Many, many people thought of me as a failure, and I absolutely refused to see myself that way. Too often we confuse the concept of success and failure with what is perceived to be normal and abnormal. What is the definition of normal? According to the Webster's Dictionary, normal is defined as conforming to the standard. Conform to whose standard? I don't like this. I don't conform to anybody's standard. There's not just one way to learn. Whatever happened to thinking and learning and acting outside of the box? So it was because I didn't fit the standard, I was seen as a failure. How narrow-minded could that be? I wasn't going to conform. I knew I wasn't stupid. I just didn't see it their way. So getting me through school was very difficult, and my parents worked very, very hard to get me to understand things. But their greatest message to me was their teaching about honor about our integrity, about our values. And what is really important in all of our lives is our family and our health. Even though I wasn't a good student, my parents weren't going to let my self-esteem, my sense of honor and integrity slip away from me. There were very valuable lessons that they were going to be able to teach me. What I saw missing in Hinckley, California is exactly what I see missing from society today. We have lost our very basic fundamental values. And I didn't always practice these, but when I stumbled onto this case, these very people re-taught me these lessons. And I've learned because of them, in the end, the winner isn't the person with the most possessions. The winner in the end is the person who has the most values. So when I was asked to go out on a lecture circuit, I really stopped and thought, what is it that I'm going to say to people? I don't want to just stand up here and try to be funny or talk about the movie, because this is very, very serious to me. And as I reflected back on my work and my life, and I took a look at what was really driving me, I could clearly see that it was the lessons of my mom and my dad. I did not always apply what they taught me, but when I stumbled on the case in Hinckley, California, I began to apply the lessons that I'm going to talk to you about, and they continue to work for me this very day. My father's #1 lesson was about honesty. And don't think I'm going to sit here and tell you I'm Miss Goody Two-Shoes and I've never told a lie, because I have. And I learned the hard way about lying to my father. I was in high school, and my mom dropped me off, and I went in the front door, and as soon as I could see that she was out of the way, I went out the back door, because I was going to skip school for the day and go party with my friends. So I went back to my parents' house to change my clothes, and my girlfriends were supposed to pick me up, and I don't know, 40, 50 minutes had passed and they still weren't there, and I was getting very restless, so I made arrangements for another ride. But before I left, I was worried if they showed up and I was gone, they wouldn't know where I was. So I got out a pen and paper and I wrote down whose house I was at, address, telephone number, directions, and a little map on how to get there. I thought it was a clever idea. And as I was leaving, I taped it to my parents' front door, and off I went. And unbeknownst to me, my mom came home for lunch that day, and she had intercepted the note that I had left. So here I was off having a really good time with my girlfriends, and the front door rang, and I answered it. I think I had a 12-pack underneath my arm, and there stood my mother. I can't remember whose face had more shock on it, hers or mine. I was like, what are you doing here? And she's like, well, honey, you left me directions. I was like, oh my God. Stupid. So, but of course I lied to her face, and it was a total June Cleaver moment. You just wait till your father gets home. And of course my father got home. Now, had I been honest with this guy, I would have still been punished, but not like I was. I told a bold-faced lie. He said, you know what, I don't know what it's gonna take for me to drive home a message to you about honesty. And it's not about even being honesty with, being honest with me, Erin. It's about your own sense of honor and integrity. And I got grounded. That guy grounded me for 6 months. God, I could not go out. I couldn't see my friends. I had no use of the car. I couldn't use my personal phone. I am always on the telephone. It was torture. And after he punished me, and I had this big trip planned to Chicago, Illinois with my girlfriends, he took it away. He had to go out of town. And while he was gone, he wrote me a letter. And I have kept this letter everywhere. I've actually had phone calls from the National Archives of the United States of America asking to keep this letter on file. And it says a lot about my father and about what I was taught and about our honor system. And I want to read you the letter. My dad writes to me, Dear Erin, writing up to Lincoln, Nebraska this morning, I read the enclosed in the morning Kansas City newspaper. He sent me an article on Jimmy Carter and the issues of lying. Okay, so you see, this issue is very important to even the President of the United States, and it shouldn't be any less important to you and me. I know last night tore you up, it did me too. But we are dealing here with a very basic principle, and you are old enough to understand it. That is, if you, your brothers and sister, your mother and I cannot freely and honestly communicate with each other and believe what we are saying and hearing, then we have lost everything. To do otherwise tears up the very fabric of our family, which until you start your own is the finest possession you will have on this earth. Someday you and I will look back on last night and laugh and kid about it. I know, for I used to do the same thing with my parents, as I too used to get into trouble now and then. The thing to do now is to accept your punishment like an adult and resolve to yourself that it will never happen again. There are many trips ahead of you, and most of them will be more fun than the one to Chicago. So the loss is not that great. The loss of our respect for each other would be much, much greater. Remember, your mother and I love you very much and want you to develop into an admired, honest, and respected woman. Together, Erin, we can be assured that that will be accomplished. I love you, Dad. When I got that letter, I wasn't very receptive to what it is that he had to say. I mumbled a couple of foul things under my breath, and I threw it into a box. And driving home from Hinckley, California, I kept thinking and ruminating about something. What is it about this lie bestowed upon these people that is making me feel so indignant? And I went home and I pulled out this letter. And it says everything. See, it put things into perspective about honesty. Honesty is about communication. Honesty is about believing in yourself and believing in others. It's about respect. And that's very important. Each case that I'm involved in, there is always a lie. Deceit in itself is destroying America and our world. And we are now creating a world without trust. And I think that's a really bad place for us to be. Have any of you ever heard of the word stick-to-itiveness? Yes? No? I've heard it a lot, okay? My mother. I used to come home all the time with another D or an F. You always see my report card in high school. D, 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 D plus. Ooh, D plus. I love those D pluses. You know, going through school for me was really tough, and I'd always come home being dejected. Mom was this big old cheerleader. Is that because I was flapping my head everywhere? Can you still hear me? Okay. She would always tell me, Erin, you just have to have stick-to-itiveness. And I'm thinking, what the hell is that word? Stick to what, Mother? Stick this to your butt. How's that? Is stick-to-itiveness. What the hell that means? God. You know, and the more she said it, the more I thought, where in the hell is this word coming from? I thought it was one of her slang words like cattywampus or slaunchwise. Yeah, my dad used to tell me you're sitting slaunchwise. Well, what the hell is that, Dad? Slaunchwise and stick-to-itiveness. So the more I failed, the more she said it. And I finally challenged her, and I said, this isn't a real word. And she's like, excuse me? Now, foolish, foolish me. My mother is an English major. She has great command of the English language. So here she comes with her little Webster dictionary. Stick-to-itiveness, noun, propensity to follow through in a determined manner, dogged persistence, born of obligation and stubbornness. Oh, I like this word. I can be determined, I can be persistent, and I have lots of stubbornness. Stick-to-itiveness is as important as anything else, but it doesn't just happen. You have to develop the habit of... Is that here? I'm sorry. Am I turning this thing off when I lean on it? Hello? Hello? Okay. You have to develop the habit of persevering even when you don't want to, and it would be easier to just give up. Any cause worth fighting for is going to require that you have stick-to-itiveness. Even getting through school. I don't envy you guys. I don't think I could go back through college and make it. And I know that there's days where you think, I can't go on. But remember the word stick-to-itiveness. It's a great word, and it can help you get to the next place that you want to go. You know the words you have to. I talk about them a lot, and I grew up listening to my father telling me, you have to eat your broccoli, and you have to go to school, and you have to brush your teeth. You have to, you have to, you have to. What does you have to mean? There was never any significant explanation why I had to eat my broccoli. And I woke up to my father, and I announced to him one day that I didn't have to do shit anymore. That's right. And that was mistake number 2. You know, I say it to my own children. They'll ask me something, I'll go, because you have to. But sometimes there's things in life that you just have to do. There is no choice, there is no decision, and there is no avoidance. And I learned this lesson when my best friend, my brother Tommy, suddenly dropped dead at 35 years old. And it was the biggest shock of my life and my mother and my father's and my siblings. This guy was the Pied Piper. You want to talk about somebody who really had life down to a T. He was happy. He passed that on to others. And I remember being at his funeral for the rest of my life, sitting in the front row. I'm telling you, I was shaking so bad I was moving the entire pew. And I told my dad, I said, I can't do this. And my dad is the most stoic man, and he was butted right up next to me, and he put his hand on my knee so I'd stop shaking. And he got me by my chin, and he looked me straight in the face, and he said, Erin Pat, you have to. You know, and it dawned on me that there's none of us, nowhere in this room, nowhere in this city, nowhere in this country, nowhere in this world, where we're going to be exempt from a tragedy or a trauma. And what do we do as human beings and individuals when we're faced with the biggest obstacle of all? Our spirit is incredible, and you can't avoid it. There's not going to be any decision. You will simply move on and prevail because you have to. And I utilize these words every single day of my life. I get involved in cases. I have my own family issues. I think, you know, once again, I can't do it. But it's here, and I'm not going to avoid it. Remember, face things head on. You can do it, and you will do it because you have to. You know, I've heard so many cliches in my life, and being a dyslexic, they were really important to me. I clung on to them for everything that they meant. And if you look at where cliches came from, it's somebody else who's had the experience, and they just made some profound statement, and they're trying to pass it on to you. And a lot of these cliches are really very, very true. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Is your glass half empty, or is it half full? Things in your life really are as you perceive them to be. If you see your glass as half empty and gloom and doom and woe is me, then that's probably what it's going to be. But you can look at your glass and see it as half full. You're going to college, you're learning, you're healthy, you have your family. It's going to be exactly what it is you're going to make it to be. You have the power to turn things around. You are in control of where it is you want to go and to choose how you're going to get there and choose how you will or won't respond to a situation. You know, these cliches, when applied, really work. And my absolute favorite, I learned it in Hinckley, California, is it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the dog. And it's true. You think about that. Now, I watch my own animals at home, and I have a 90-pound yellow lab and a 5-pound Bichon. Who do you think's butt gets chewed off every morning? It's not the Bichon. This 90-pound lab is off and running, and this little dog has an incredible amount of confidence and fight that exists inside of her, just like the people of Hinckley, California. They were a very small dog. So was the law firm of Masry and Vidito. Pacific Gas and Electric, a corporation worth $40 billion, and you're talking some heavy-hitting lawyers. Just because you're a small dog in no way doesn't mean that you are not capable of winning the fight. That's where press on comes from, and it's a slogan that was written by Calvin Coolidge that I carry in my wallet. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. It is persistence and determination alone that are omnipotent. The slogan "Press On" has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. Now, don't misunderstand what this slogan means, and it was important to me because I don't have a lot of talent. I'm absolutely not a genius, and getting an education is important. I didn't have the greatest, but please remember that not everybody is privileged enough to go get that education. So what if you're missing those components in life? You're nothing? You're worthless? Absolutely not. In the absence of everything else, you can be persistent, you can be determined, you can have stick-to-itiveness, and you can do something with your life. Press on, one of my favorite slogans. So stand up for what is right. If you believe that you are right, don't be afraid to stand up and fight for your place in the sun. You don't have to go out and get into a fist fight. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say is, don't be afraid to hang in there for the entire 12 rounds. Because even in the end, if you don't win, you've won the respect of yourself and others around you. And in that very sense alone, you have prevailed. Learning to stand up for others will enable you to learn to respect yourself. I was able to relate to the people of Hinckley. We shared a common hope, a common set of beliefs about what was right and what is wrong. You know, for the people of Hinckley, for Ed, for myself, we didn't see the outcome of this case. You think I ever just tootled right down Community Boulevard out in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and I just stopped and thought to myself, this case is going to settle for $333 million. Somebody's going to come along and make a movie about it. Oh yeah, let my ego really get out of control. Julia Roberts is going to play me, okay? I never stopped to think that. You know, Ed, this guy is just a real kick in the pants. You'd love Ed Masry. I wish he was here right today. He would always ask me, you really think that they're going to make this kid movie, you know, this movie kid, and if they do, have you thought who might play you? And I said, I don't know, maybe somebody fun like Goldie Hawn. Ed said, no, I was thinking more along the lines of Roseanne Barr. I said, thank you, Edward. Now this is a true story. Ed says, I don't care who plays you in this movie as long as it is not Julia Roberts. I know. I go, Ed, you've got to be kidding me. Julia Roberts is great. He goes, nope, cleavage isn't big enough and her mouth's not foul enough. It's never going to happen. So the day I got the phone call that it was Julia Roberts, I couldn't wait to call Ed. Neener, neener, neener. Guess who it is? We never stopped to think about the outcome. I certainly didn't. And do you think that I ever stopped for 1 minute and thought that somebody was going to hand me a $2 million bonus? You want to talk about shutting me up? I was speechless. It took me a long time to really be able to talk about how it changed my life when Ed gave me that check. He and his wife, and Jimmy Vitito and his wife, decided that it was a job well done. And they gave me a bonus. And I can certainly tell you, money isn't what's going to make you happy. Money can help and can enable you to do certain things, but it's not the answer to change your life. It was interesting for me after that bonus that everyone thought I would suddenly be so happy and life was perfect. And that's where I got another taste of, is the grass really greener on the other side? Money has its purpose, but it's not the answer. It's not what's going to make you happy. And you know, this Edward Masry, he loves to come into my office and tease me about being from Kansas and reminding me that they now have running water and flushing toilets. And he likes to talk about the Kettleman case. And he always says, you know, if we do good in Kettleman, kid, there could be a Mattel gift certificate in this for you. And I'm thinking, okay, Ed. I go, you know, I would never expect you in the future to give me another bonus, but if you did, could you please tell me about taxes? Nobody told me about taxes. Nobody told me that the IRS, I'm like, who the hell are they? Huh? Taxes? You know, see, I never made enough money to pay any taxes. Here they came. They took half of my bonus. I'm like, what? Are you nuts? So nobody told me about taxes. I remember the day I paid my taxes. I waited till April 15th. It was about 11:45. You know what was interesting about that? Half of California was at the post office April 15th at 11:45. Everybody waits till the last minute to pay their taxes. So I had written my check, and I was just going to drive through and drop it in the box. And I got up to the box. I swear to God, it was like glued to my hand. This is not working for me. So I decided that I was going to drive around for a while and think it over. This is a big deal. It's a lot of money. So I concluded that my children would be unhappy in Jamaica. You laugh, you think I'm kidding. I'm like, that was it, the hell out of here. Money and all. So I went in to pay my taxes, and of course I was a little nervous and I hung around in the post office. The other thing that I found out on April 15th is the postmaster is down there as well. And I had a female postmaster, and she was watching me. I think she thought I'd gone postal. And she'd had enough of me. I've been loitering long enough. She walked right up to the mail slot, opened it up. She looked me straight in the face. She goes, easy come, easy go, drop it, honey. Okay. You know what? We didn't know what the outcome of Hinckley was going to be. And I encourage every one of us at the end of the day, when you are lying in bed at night having a conversation with yourself, and I know that you are because I do it as well. You might be lying there having a conversation with your spouse, maybe a conversation with God. I ask all of us to look carefully at the decisions we've made that day, and I hope that we feel good about them. You know, I bet at some point in your life, your ethics are going to be compromised. At some point in time, you might find yourself in a situation where you're faced with an offer, a new title at work, a new car, a raise, all to keep your mouth shut about something else. Make the right decisions and choose wisely, and I hope that we don't do that, because we all know the difference between right and wrong. Can you imagine had the one or the few at PG&E made a different decision, a moral decision, an ethical decision? They would have been personally responsible for saving hundreds of lives. Your decisions have the ability to impact others. They can harm a faceless, nameless individual, and you might not be around in the end to see the result of your decision and the result that it had on somebody else. I really came full circle when I stumbled upon Hinckley, California. The values that I was taught is exactly what was stolen from those people. When I do my work today, the lessons of my parents come first. I practice honesty, and I will look for deceit. I do apply stick-to-itiveness to everything that I do. I get despondent, but I move on because I will not avoid what stares me in the face. I get scared, and I doubt myself, but I will press on. Don't let somebody with a little bit more talent or a better education or more success run you off from what it is that you believe in. Remember, you may be the smaller dog, but that doesn't mean that you can't win the fight. Strive for what you believe in, seek out the truth, and never compromise your integrity. In closing, I put together a few little philosophies. I'll go through them quickly. Now, I've been told there's a light I'm supposed to be looking at. Like, does red mean stop? Is that correct? Green, no? Do you want me to shut up? Yeah, I told you if I saw that red light, I was going to do what Julia Roberts did at the Oscars and shut up, I'm not done talking yet. Do I have a few more minutes?
Can we continue to the question and answer? Is that all right?
Oh, you got 5 minutes.
You decide. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
5 more minutes. All right, thanks. I'm sorry. Blah, 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 blah. I'll go through this really quick, but they're important to me. If my head and my heart are not in sync, something has to be wrong internally, and until I fix it, I cannot attain my inner harmony. Oftentimes we mistake the message our emotions are sending us. Either we personalize a situation that is not meant to be taken as such, or we depersonalize exactly what it is we should be taking to heart. I believe that the head and the heart do not work separately. They work in tandem. Don't be afraid to listen to your heart. Allow your morals to help your mind in making decisions. When our hearts and our minds meet, you will find yourself making different decisions, but appropriate decisions that have integrity and respect for yourself and for others. Don't be afraid. There's another major component to us as human beings. Your logic serves for one purpose, and this can tell you another. Listen to your heart. Practice honesty. It's really important to try and practice honesty. And to this day, I know about truth. I know about honor. But I may make a little slip and tell a little fib, and occasionally you have to practice honesty. Lying is a deadly cancer of your emotion. It can spread through your mind and will eventually kill your spirit. Whenever we lie to anybody else, we are really lying to ourselves. Somewhere along the way, the lie will work for you and will become the truth as you have recreated it. Once this happens, your moral guidelines, your essential honesty, your integrity, all of it self-destructs. And the result is you are no longer facing your obstacle. You have become the obstacle. Do what you like, and you will succeed. So what is the difference between talent and ability? It's motivation. It is better to try to be the best that you can than try to be the best that there is. Stick with what you like, and you're going to be amazed at how good you already are. Be realistic about yourself and your situation. Not every one of us is going to be the leader of a team. We are all created differently, and while some of us have talents that are more obvious than others, each one of us has a level of attainment that we can achieve. I talk a little bit about egos. That might be because I work all day with lawyers. I know there's a few in the crowd. Did you laugh? Egos. Egos can become man's biggest stumbling block, and I have seen it happen over and over and over again. When we think that we can get away with something, is it because we think we are smarter or better than everyone else? I don't know. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But these aren't the deciding factors when you're in a struggle. The willingness to try your best and fail will make your commitment that much stronger. Know when to set your egos aside. They will stand in your way. You know, I have learned since this movie came out that the key to maintaining your sanity when anything unusual, great, or big happens in your life, an event that upsets the natural flow of things, is to try to remember this, that in the end, the attention, the glare, and the money are not what it is about you that has brought all of this down on your head. Success isn't about any single one person. At best, your actions and achievements serve as a vehicle for much greater stories, causes, and numbers of people. It is not about the ego, but it is about the issues, and it's not about you, it's about what you represent. Don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes. I truly am an expert in this area. I've made plenty of them, and I'm going to make plenty more. But by learning from your mistakes, you'll discover that they're not mistakes after all. They're learning tools. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is the best route to finding real success. I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. Booker T. Washington. Integrity and persistence, they're important qualities. Never let your goals in your life or your desires make you compromise your values. Any victory in life is meaningless without them. And finally, I encourage everybody to take the time for right now. Have you ever heard the old saying, stop and smell the roses? We need to take the time to do this. It wasn't long ago, again, I got a phone call that a very, very dear friend of mine had suddenly died. And by God, it became once again the most important lesson of all. And we forget, one day you're here and the next day you can be gone. Life is a precious and fragile gift, and we need to take the time to stop and smell the roses. Don't be afraid to tell your family that you love them. Don't be afraid to listen to nature. Don't be afraid to sit and take the warmth of the sun on your face and internalize something and think about something and think about where it is you're going. Because I think that once you get in that quiet spot, you find the real voice inside yourself. That's the voice that gets you moving. That's your passion. That's where you can begin to make a difference. Not everything that you and I do will be a PG&E lawsuit, and there may not be a monetary reward in the end. But if you are true to yourself and your moral and spiritual foundations remain strong and intact, you will enjoy a different and a far more valuable reward. You will discover, amongst other things, there is no obstacle that you cannot surmount. There is no challenge that you cannot meet. There is no fear that you cannot conquer, no matter how impossible it seems. I sit here today as living proof that you can dive headlong into the waters of adversity and begin to rescue yourself and others. Remember this: to accomplish great things, we must not only act, but also dream, not only plan, but we must also believe. You must believe in you. You must believe in your cause. It is the critical tilt in all of life's battles. Believing in yourself is a form of confidence, which is a form of respect, which is a form of the truth. And life can be as simple as that. My message today is never stop believing in you. You can and you do make a difference in this world. Thank you very much.